Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. Today we have a episode I'm really excited to film, which is the best, i.e. worst, greenwashing tactics from fashion brands in 2023. So I did a little submission call on my TikTok and I think my Instagram for you guys to send me in your submissions of what you think was the worst. And I've also done the list with my own submissions too. So let's just get into it. Okay, I think we get the biggest and the most obvious out the way straight away, which is the Shein influencer trip, which happened back in summer. It's kind of been talked about to death, so I don't really want to go into exactly what happened. If you don't know, then if you Google it, like 1,000 articles are going to pop up, so just do that. But let's talk about the fallout of it more, because I think that's the more interesting part. So the whole kind of trip was greenwashing anyway. They were trying to, convince these influencers and their audiences that these factories were a real representation of what happens in Shein suppliers, which we all know was just not the case. I think it resulted in so much negative press, so much backlash, that it really damaged Shein's public image, which is the complete opposite of what they wanted, especially considering they were going for an IPO that year. I think because it went so mainstream, like every magazine and news outlet you can think of covered it. So this app that, mostly was, I'd argue, known on TikTok only, or, online social media only, then became mainstream to our parents and our grandparents in the worst possible way. But I think the most interesting part is the way it sort of opened up the dialogue about whether influencers should be held accountable for promoting brands or, spreading brand propaganda on their own channels. Because obviously influencers are a relatively new thing. And they don't really have the background to actually do their own research and make their own decisions when it comes to brand greenwashing. In most cases, most fashion influencers probably don't have a journalism degree or a law degree, or, I know I'm generalizing here, but you need proper training in order to recognize brands' lies for what they are. Opening up this whole discussion about who has the blame for greenwashing is going to be so important as we get further into sustainable fashion and brands become increasingly desperate to convince consumers that they are better than they are. So in this case, should it have been on Shein to come out and say, look, we duped these influencers into believing that this was an average factory, an average representation of what our workers go through? Or should it have been on the influencers to kind of step back and say, this doesn't make sense at all? They should have done some research, some background research into what the fashion industry is like and what Shein is known for. Because prior to this trip, they were known for bad working conditions and sweatshops and stuff. So should they have armed themselves with that knowledge, that skepticism before walking into a factory? I think it's on everyone, to be honest, but I think just the fact that we're having this discussion is so interesting and so important. So that's why I've included it in the list, even though it's kind of been talked about to death and I didn't really want to talk about it, but I wanted to talk about this side of it. Okay, the next submission, and I don't necessarily know if it's greenwashing, but I think it's so interesting, so I wanted to include it, is when I did my H&M video on going to their in-store resale section and checking that out, I had a lot of submissions on people watching this video saying that other brands are doing the same thing. So someone mentioned the Primark vintage collection, and just other fast fashion brands trying to hop on this resale bandwagon. And I think that was so interesting, and it's, it should be more public knowledge that brands are trying to do this and why it's exactly a bad thing, I guess, because on paper it looks fine, but when you go into the nuances of it, it's actually not great. And I know Lakeland's done a really good thread, which I'll post and link to if you want to research more into that. I covered it a little bit in my video, but while it's technically not greenwashing, it does feel a little bit shady. It feels, why have they done this? It feels like a half-assed attempt to drag in some eco-conscious consumers. In my video on this, I did talk about the fact that they're not using their own donation submissions for this resale. So everyone knows H&M have donation boxes that they have in stores, most of their stores, I think. But the clothes that they're reselling then in their Regent Street store and wherever else they do this resale venture, those clothes aren't coming from the donation boxes they have in store. So I think that's really fishy, to be honest. I don't know what they're doing with these donated clothes if not trying to resell them in store or maybe online. But no, they're getting a third party. It's weird. What are they doing with those clothes? Are they not even bothering to sort them and just shipping them off? I don't know, but that's why I've included it, because that question needs to be answered. Another sort of set of submissions, a lot of people mention the Kardashian sisters and their car crash of a year. So I thought we'd go through that quickly. So obviously Kylie's brand, which I did a whole video on, Kai, was nothing really greenwashy, but it did just feel, I mean, it kind of was, to be honest, because she marketed it as quiet luxury, but the clothing was made from like 100% polyester, or, you know, like really high polyester count. That is greenwashing. You know, you're being sold this product as luxury. It's got a certain price point, which is more than, say, H&M and Zara in most cases, but you're receiving 100% virgin plastic goods. Doesn't sit right with me. So I think that's greenwashing. I know maybe technically you could say it isn't, but I feel like consumers are being misled there. Someone else mentioned Kourtney's posting as Boohoo's sustainability ambassador, which I 100% agree is greenwashing. It was literally just a public campaign. They know that attaching their brand to her name is going to get press. We have yet to see her do anything other than bring out more plastic clothes for the brand. So yeah, 100% greenwashing there, and probably just the most ridiculous, one of the most ridiculous of the whole year, I would say, because it's so transparently bad. Do you know what I mean? Like, they haven't put any effort at all into thinking about how they can market it as sustainable. I don't know, they were just kind of like, yeah, let's go for it. Let's release a collection of plastic clothes with the name of Kourtney and call it sustainable, even though we have no claims to back that up. But I think probably maybe the one with the most backlash was Kim's nipple bra. I didn't really even talk about this, to be honest, on any of my channels, because it immediately just fatigued me. I was just kind of like, what is she thinking? Like, there was no real discourse I had about it because I could not understand at all why this was a thing. I know that there has been some public favour for it for various reasons. I think, though, the way she marketed it, that joke about global warming keeping us warm, but this nipple bra meaning we'll always be able to present ourselves as cold, or however she phrased it, that was a bit tongue-in-cheek. I think just the deeper issue of, you know, using the global warming crisis to market your products is tone deaf to the extreme. And obviously Greenpeace put out their statement about it, and I do agree with what they're saying there. It's just so tone deaf, especially from the Kardashian brand, which is, you know, excessive opulence, new clothes always, flying places, blah, blah, blah. They obviously have a track record of not caring about sustainability or being really flippant about it. So yeah, I don't know what she was thinking, and it's probably one of the most baffling greenwashing scenarios of this year. One of the more audacious ones of this year really got me angry at the time was the Primark sponsored study saying that the price of clothes is not linked to durability. And I did a whole thread on this, which I'll link below if you want to go into it more. But there's something about headlines which are deceptive, which really gets me annoyed. Like, because most people are just scrolling on an app or, you know, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, they'll see this headline and they'll take it at face value without clicking on the link. So if they're seeing this headline and they're thinking, oh, okay, so I can buy cheap clothing and it won't matter because even more expensive clothing is not going to last as long, they're not going to take the time to click on the link and see that Primark, a fast fashion brand who has a very obvious interest in making you believe this, has sponsored the study. Because we get bombarded with news all the time. Like, you can't expect people to click on every link they see. Normally we just take things at face value on social media, and there's a whole like study about that and a whole discourse and whether it's right or wrong, whatever. But they knew that when they sponsored the study, and they knew that when they put that headline, and that was just annoying to me. You can tell I've gone on a mini rant. I'm still annoyed by it. But anyway, let's move on to the next one. So someone commented on my TikTok video about the Coachtopia bag review that a creator had done. Hannah Leatherstein, the guy that rips up bags and like analyzes them and sees if they're good quality or not, he did the Coachtopia bag, which is made out of like a futuristic leather material, and found that it was basically all plastic. He himself said that he didn't consider the bag to be made out of leather and found the way they had marketed it quite misleading. I think this is just the issue with brands trying to come up with sustainability initiatives to make a quick dollar without actually thinking through what it means for the environment. I think we're just going to see so many of these as sustainability becomes more and more of an issue. So in itself, I don't think it's a massive greenwashing issue. He said he wouldn't exactly consider it greenwashing, just misleading slightly. But I think the further issue of brands thinking that they can say anything is sustainable without backing it up, that is the bigger issue here, and hopefully something we're going to be fixing with legislation. One of the things he said that was most interesting to me on this was that the bag, which was made out of plastic and leather dust, he said that it was priced pretty similarly to raw leather materials, which we all know, the ethics of it aside, is going to be better quality. So that's, I think, what's the most annoying about this whole thing, is the brand is selling you something they've said is sustainable, so they think they can price at a certain point, and you're getting arguably bad quality plastic and leather dust instead. And that just makes consumers even more wary of sustainability products, and more distrustful of sustainable fashion. Oh, okay, this one was insane. So the non-executive chair of Inditex, which if you don't know is the parent company of Zara, that big brand that creates so many clothes and is what you would call fast fashion. The chair of Inditex came out and said that the brand does not consider themselves fast fashion, and the reason she gave for it is even funnier. So she said that fast fashion calls to mind, mountains of clothes that haven't been sold and very cheap prices and, cheap fabrics and whatever, which she said could not be further from what Zara do. I mean, it's just public knowledge that this is what Zara do, and she's just lying in an interview. I mean, the audacity. What is even funnier, this just keeps getting better, what is even funnier is that term fast fashion had been coined to describe Zara and their new production model at the time, which made a dress in 15 days, I think it is, was literally coined to describe Zara. And now she's trying to say that her brand could not be further from this definition. What do you mean? Also, I have beef with the CEO of LVMH, who said in another interview that luxury is inherently sustainable, which is just untrue. It's today's luxury brands, that's not true for them. They use really similar materials to fast fashion. Obviously, Kai's quiet luxury that she's trying to market as sustainable. Even big name brands use so much polyester. What's sustainable about that? They are churning out items at a very similar rate to fast fashion brands. What is sustainable about that? The way they burn clothes, like I spoke about in my most recent video on the EU. What is sustainable about that? Maybe you could make the case that people keep luxury items longer and that's sustainable. That's true. If you buy a £3,000 bag, you're most likely going to look after it more than a £30 bag. Sure. But that is not the whole story. You have to think about what goes into the product, how you treat your garment workers, which, often are treated the same as fast fashion garment workers. There's so many other things you need to think about. And while sure, the longevity of how long a customer keeps the product is an important factor, you're still trying to push overconsumption on us all the time. These marketing tactics you have are really similar to fast fashion. So what is sustainable about that? Oh, this one really, really annoyed me. So as you can tell. Last one is another submission from my TikTok video. Someone found an Anthropology email that marketed their products as less itchy than vintage. It's such a cheap shot to begin with. Like, what are you talking about? But also, what are you talking about? Like, as if all vintage is itchy. And also, like, how itchy are their clothes? Like, less itchy than vintage implies some itchiness. It's just a weird, cheap shot to make. Didn't really make sense. I don't know what Anthropology were thinking really with this email. And that it had to go through, like, when I worked in a fashion brand, I had at least 2 other people checking my emails before we could send them out to customers. So that multiple people have signed off on this and haven't thought about what they're actually trying to say. It's weird. It's a weird one for me. But anyway, out of all of these, which one is your top one? Or have I missed out like a really big one? Because I might have. I should start taking these notes during the year so that when it comes to the end of the year, I'm not trying to like backdate all of the research and stuff. I should take more notes, and I will next year. But yeah, let me know what your favorite was and let me know if I've missed anything out. And yeah, have a lovely day and I'll speak to you really soon. Bye.